Hello YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. This is Some Old Elvis Guy. Thank you for joining me. Today's video is the beginning of a short series looking at some of the recording sessions of Elvis Presley. Just giving us a chance to take a little time to pause and have a look at a little bit about the background to some sessions and the songs recorded within them. To start the series, we go with a session that I think is quite significant in a number of ways. Elvis went into this recording session having just won a Grammy Award for Best Inspirational Performance. Now, I'm sure that gives some of you a clue as to what year we're talking about here. We're talking about 1975. And particularly the recording sessions that took place from March the 10th to March the 13th of 1975 at RCA Studio C on 6363 Sunset. Now, as I said earlier, Elvis went into these recording sessions shortly after winning a Grammy for Best Inspirational Performance. But it's interesting when we look at these sessions, they are quite unique in a number of ways. These sessions are the last formal studio sessions Elvis ever attended. I'm aware he recorded at home in Graceland, but these are the last sessions that he recorded in an actual official recording studio. This was the first time that Elvis had recorded since December of 1973 when he recorded at Stax Studios in Memphis. And what's interesting is in 1974 there were no studio recordings whatsoever. So in 1974 to rely on live recordings. The only other year that happened was in 1959 when Elvis was in the army and stationed away in Germany. Of course, after this session in 75, there were no sessions recorded in 1977 either. Again, there were January sessions scheduled for 77 in Nashville, but these had to be cancelled. That might be something we could have a little look at in another video actually, is the aborted sessions of 77 in Nashville. If you'd be interested in having a wee look at that in a video, let me know in the comments. So these sessions were his last in a formal recording studio setting and his first since December of 1973. He also brought his road band with him for these sessions. So we had James Burton on guitar, John Wilkinson on guitar. Now it's interesting when we come to look at the bass player on these sessions. Duke Bardwell had taken over after Jerry Schiff had left. But what's interesting is that neither Felton Jarvis or Elvis were, for whatever reason, weren't exactly happy with the bass lines that Duke had put down. So his bass recordings were later overdubbed and removed. They're removed from every track in this session with the exception of the single Trouble, which was released so quickly that his bass line is still on that, but it was removed from all of the others. So Duke didn't have a great time in these sessions, really, in terms of posterity. We've got Ronnie Tutt on drums. We've got Glenn Hardin and David Briggs on piano. So it's the band that we are familiar with at that time. So let's have a little dive in. I personally have a soft spot for these recording sessions. I think they are of a very high standard and I really like what was produced from these sessions. Interestingly, with the exception of the Tiger Man jam session that we'll look at in a minute, all of the tracks were released on the one album. So it was a much more structured approach. As we know, some of the albums, particularly in the 70s that had come before, used tracks from many years before, tracks left over from previous sessions, etc. Whereas the album that came from this, Elvis Today, which I think is one of Elvis's strongest 70s albums, all of the tracks come from these sessions. When you think about it, these sessions took place over 3 days. It was a Monday, a Tuesday and a Wednesday of that week. March the 10th, 11th and 12th of 1975. So let's have a dive in and look at the tracks that were recorded and when they were recorded. So these sessions began on the 10th of March, and between 9 p.m. and midnight, Elvis recorded Fairy Tale, the Pointer Sisters song that we know from live performances in 77. We see it in the CBS tapes.
This next song is a story of my life. It's called Fairy Tale.
On March the 11th, the first track laid down, which was between about midnight and 3:30 in the morning, was The Green Green Grass of Home. Elvis had waited a long time to record this song. When he first heard the Tom Jones version, he loved it. Interestingly, it wasn't issued as a single in the States at all. RCA did release it in the UK in November of 75, and they coupled it with Thinking About You, and it peaked at number 29 in the charts in the UK. The next song recorded in the same time frame, midnight to 3:30, March the 11th, was the Billy Swan song I Can Help. Many years later, in 1983, RCA released I Can Help as a single in the UK. They coupled it with The Lady Loves Me, the outtake duet with Anne Margaret from Viva Las Vegas, which, if memory serves, was released for the first time on A Legendary Performer Volume 4. Unfortunately, this single didn't do awfully well, and it barely scraped into the top 30 in the singles chart. Between 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. on the 11th of March, Elvis recorded the Don McLean song And I Love You So. What's interesting, when you listen to the session tapes from these sessions and you listen to take one of And I Love You So, it becomes clear that Elvis's then girlfriend Sheila Ryan was at these sessions, because at the beginning of take one, Elvis asked Sheila to come up so that he can sing the song directly to her.
Step here, Sheila, let me sing to you, baby.
As with quite a lot of the songs from these sessions, Elvis sang them live really rather often, which wasn't always the case. If you think back to a lot of other recordings of Elvis earlier in the 70s, he wasn't an artist who always would necessarily be guaranteed to promote a single by singing it live. But he sang And I Love You So right to the end of his career, really. He sang it a total of about 125 times. He sang And I Love You So live. I think it's an amazing version of the song. I think Elvis makes it very much his own. The emotionality in his voice, the sincerity that comes through in his voice. It's a song that I think would have been very easy to have made sound saccharine and artificial. Elvis doesn't do that. There's genuine emotion. You feel the song when he sings it. The arrangement with the strings, again, could have sounded very saccharine. It doesn't. It's really well produced, I think, and it works. And from March 75 to right the way through to June 77, Elvis kept singing And I Love You So. As I said earlier, 125 times. It's also interesting that the majority of these songs, Elvis laid down in only a handful of takes. He wasn't having to come back day after day to these songs. And I think they're recorded really well and they stand up. Let's look at the next track that Elvis recorded. Again on March the 11th, this time from 9 p.m. till midnight. It's a song that's one of my wife's favourites. My wife's called Susan. I wonder if that gives you a clue what the song is. It is, of course, Susan When She Tried. Again, it's quite an upbeat, up-tempo song. A really solid country-style song, which I really like. So that was all the recordings from March the 11th. Now we move on to March the 12th, and midnight 30 to 3:30 in the morning. There's two tracks were recorded here. There's a Tiger Man jam session, which is quite different from previous versions of Tiger Man we know from the 68 special. But what's interesting here is that Tiger Man jam session sat unreleased until the Walk a Mile in My Shoes 70s Masters box set came out. The other song recorded at this time in the recording sessions was Trouble. This is a great rocking song, and probably one of the last great rockers Elvis ever recorded. Not an easy song to sing, to get your tongue round the fast lyrics, and an amazing piano line on it as well. It's interesting that between April and August of 75, Elvis performed that song, his current single, Trouble. He performed it live on stage promoting that new single. So after a short break from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m, Elvis recorded another 2 tracks, Woman Without Love and Shake a Hand. Again, both strong songs. I get that Woman Without Love lyrically probably hasn't dated awfully well, if I'm honest. But it takes nothing away from the fact that it was a song of its time and a really good song, sang really, really well, and one that I often listen to. After Woman Without Love, Elvis laid down Shake a Hand. Again, really nice, kind of bluesy feel to Shake a Hand. I think the instrumentation, I think the production, I think the vocals throughout these sessions are top notch. And as I said earlier, I think they are probably my favourite sessions in the studio in the late 70s for Elvis. From 9 p.m. till midnight on the 12th of March, Elvis laid down Bringing It Back, which I absolutely love. It is such a feel-good song. And I think it's an antidote to people who say all Elvis wanted to record were downbeat songs. There's a sort of feeling from the mainstream media that anything after Aloha is depressing and emotional and no joy. Simply not true. These sessions show a focused Elvis singing a variety of types of song, including up-tempo numbers, upbeat numbers, as well as being able to give the authentic emotionality in some of the ballads that just makes them touch you when you listen to them. The final song of these sessions was recorded on the 13th of March. It's the only song recorded on the 13th. It was recorded between midnight 30 and 3:30 in the morning, and that is Pieces of My Life. To my mind, this stands as one of Elvis's greatest studio recordings. I think it stands up there alongside recordings like Long Black Limousine, which is my all-time favourite studio recording. But I think Pieces of My Life, the authentic emotionality, coupled with the careful production of the song, you feel every single word he utters, and you believe every word he utters. I think, as I say, it's one of his greatest studio recordings, and it's one that I keep coming back to. And it's interesting, the overdubs on these tracks, on Pieces of My Life, but on these sessions as a whole, aren't as overpowering and dominating as they are in some of the other sessions. I do like to listen to the undubbed versions, but I don't find there's an overproduction the way there is in some of the Graceland sessions. I would argue there's a level of focus and energy from Elvis in these recordings that is greater than what we see in the July 73 Stax recordings, which I think makes for a truly great album. I think Elvis Today is an overlooked album. If you were to stop the average person in the street, I don't think they would have any idea of the existence of the Elvis Today album. I think it's a much greater album than it's given credit for. And I would like to see this album reappraised by people, because some of the tracks, I believe, are up there with some of the greatest he recorded. And it's an album I keep coming back to, and I absolutely love. What do you think of the Today album? Where would you rank it in the 70s albums? If we've got, for example, albums like Good Times, Promised Land, Today, Elvis Now, in that sort of period of mid to late 70s albums, what's your thoughts on Today? Let me know in the comments. Do you have a particular track that's your favourite from these Today sessions? I think mine probably is Pieces of My Life. I think it's nothing short of a masterpiece. I hope you've enjoyed this delve into Elvis's recording sessions. If there's a particular session you would like me to do a video on, let me know in the comments and we'll try and do that for you. If you've liked this video, it would be wonderful if you could click a like for me. And it would be absolutely amazing if you could subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell so that you're notified when I create new content. Thank you for joining me today. This has been Duncan, some old Elvis guy. Till next time.